in a school in this area recently, they did a spot check. This was quite recently, a spot check on the number of kids that they had actually in the school. And it turned out they only had 2/3 of the children there that they should have had. Another third were away for unacceptable reasons.
Truancy has increased alarmingly in most of our major cities. Some estimate that as many as 500,000 children miss school every day. This film is about a small school for truants, set up by 2 teachers in the crypt of a church in the East End of London. The story is told by the teachers and the children themselves.
About 2 years ago, there was considerable concern over the large number of children that were out of school. A lot of people, parents, teachers, social workers, youth workers, felt that there ought to be some alternative provision made for these kids. The ILEA agreed to the secondment of 2 teachers to this project and a small amount of money for equipment. They refused to give us anything for premises. One of the children, in fact, remembered that he'd come to this crypt when he was younger to a youth club. So it was largely on the initiative of one of the children that we found this place.
I got this place because my mate knew the vicar and he checked the club up. So we got it. This is the bomb shelter and this is the escape we used to have. So we're going to use this part for later on in the year for our school. And there's a man coming to tell if we can keep our school.
When they say to you, like, what school to go to, and you say, I go to the Intermediate Education Centre, they immediately think dances, you know, all truants dances, you know, like, people don't, we come from the slums of London, just don't care. But all of us care, everybody cares in this school.
Can we elect a chairman, please?
Yeah,
Can I be?
Well, somebody have to nominate.
Terry Withers.
All right, I'll second that.
I forfeit it. I forfeit it.
One at a time. All right, make sure everybody goes one at a time.
What was quite interesting was at the beginning, if we chose somebody to sort of run the meeting, they'd either always choose Nick or me. And gradually now that, I mean, Nick and I are almost the last people that are ever chosen to run a meeting. In 6 weeks, from being just not interested in what another child was saying, really, they are now actually quietening down and other children saying, shh, he's talking. And they're beginning to work together as a group.
Hi, Mesh.
No, wait, Mesh. Mesh. And pig.
No, don't put sausages.
Exactly what mincemeat.
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 I can't make up my mind. I think actually I'd rather have sausages myself. I'll just bring up the thing about smoking again. 4 a day, everybody agreed, and I'm sticking to it, and I think that's pretty good.
I stuck to it.
But maybe this morning we can make a graph.
Yeah.
So that we can watch the numbers of cigarettes being smoked going down.
Yes, but you won't trust them like that.
We have just, I think, 2 criteria on accepting kids. One is they should fit roughly into the age range of 11 to 14. And they must live within a geographical area of Bethnal Green. We're not, in fact, offering an alternative to children who are going to school. We're, in fact, coping with children who are not at school, and so this is an alternative to the streets.
I used to climb houses, and I used to run around the streets, and I used to get people chasing me. And once they catch me, they just say, "Yeah, I'll take you up to the police station." And then I run again. And I used to, sometimes, when I was asleep or something, I used to come up here. I used to hide in a room under the bed. and at the end, I'd say I've been at school, and I'd just come and sit down. And sometimes I used to go over there, and I used to, over the barrow, and I used to sit there, knocking about with stones and things, climbing on the roof and that.
Did you enjoy yourself when you weren't at school?
Not really. Not walking around the streets or just climbing. I don't enjoy that.
Why did you do it then?
Because I didn't like school. That was it.
It's quite salutary to think about what makes a kid like this. I mean, I would hate it, you know, just wandering around the streets all day, every day, having no money. And it makes you realise just how sort of afraid they are of school. And I mean, here we're not talking about kids that sort of have the odd day off. We're talking about kids that have been out of school for 18 months. We're trying to solve 2 things in the centre. One is we're trying to cope with the education of up to 20 kids who, and before we were going, were receiving no education. That's the first priority, it must be. The second priority is that we hope that what we do here will sort of go some way to showing an alternative model of how a school should be run.
4 sevens. What's that? 4 sevens. 21. No, 28.
Yeah. Most of the time that we've spent so far has been working on very, very basic subjects in a very, very traditional way. We spend the whole morning sort of reading, writing and arithmetic, which is in many ways is a sort of area that we could be very severely criticised on from sort of libertarian teachers. But it's necessary for these children to master the basic skills, because if you're going to do anything in the least bit out of the ordinary, the children have got to get something from it.
I live with my dad and my sister. I like football, and I go to football games, and I like West Ham.
Right. How do you get to West Ham when you
Train.
put that in? Who do you go with?
With friends.
Go on, put all that in.
Seven sixes.
A lot of these children are very physical. They're very full of energy, and they need a release for this. And so the idea of fighting is quite a good idea, because it sort of enables them to actually physically attack you, often quite heavily. You know, some of the kids get quite hurt, and it's necessary somehow to calm them down. And so we sort of like the idea of sort of relaxing within a group and beginning to have, you know, if you like, a sort of sense of trust in the group, that they won't drop you.
Got a really good feeling out of it. Hey, go slow. Just relax. Right, now keep him there. Stay there, just for a second, and rock him.
We took Roy because he was suspended from his school, and apparently he can't go back to his school because his school won't have him. And it's very doubtful whether any other primary school in the area would take him. And if you look at Roy in the situation here, you wonder, well, why the hell won't they take him? But if you, I mean, in a large, unstructured unit, Roy would be impossible to contain. He just buggers around all day. And the result of this is that he gets a bad reputation. If a kid's got a bad reputation, there's a low expectation of his behaviour, and the thing sort of escalates, until eventually Roy becomes a total social outcast within the school. And he reacts against it, and he starts throwing things around the room. And if you're in the position of his head teacher or his class teacher, what the hell do you do with a kid like that? And yet here, he's able to freak out occasionally, but still come back to the group because the group want him. And I think for the first time in his life, he's found a school where he's actually physically wanted. The reasons children truant are as varied as the number of children that truant. You know, I mean, there is the only sort of generalisation that I've been able to make from talking to a lot of kids that truant is that they feel lost in their schools. They feel that there's nobody there they can relate to.
Tuesdays and Wednesdays diary.
Tuesdays.
Well, yesterday's and today's to do.
Take Terry Withers, for example. He's a child who comes from the most depressed area of Tower Hamlets. And because he hasn't got a father, he's been forced, I think, to sort of play the role of the man of the house.
That's it.
Should be. That's it.
There's another one over here.
That's it. Right, done it. You won't go on there anyway.
Done it.
Leave this alone, Jack. I'll fix this later on. That's going in that one over there. That's going in that one over there, right? I've got to take that all out of there. I've got to clean it.
The housing conditions are appalling. You can't sort of isolate one family and sort of talk about their problems without looking at the entire pattern of social life in this area. I mean, it's incredible to think that you're still living in a time where families haven't got hot water when they want it. And there is nothing they can do to get it. And to actually sort of go through the bureaucracy, you've got to be reasonably articulate to survive.
Because of that. You want that screw out of there. You've got to make a hole in the board there, right?
There's a cap for that.
That one over there. Look at the arms down here, look.
When you've actually got a 14-year-old child trying to be the man of the family, he was responsible for a lot of things that would crack, I think, most adults.
Well, now my dad ain't here, and on Mondays I go down to the post office to get the social security. On Friday I go down and get the family allowance. And I stop my brother and sister from fighting and arguing.
Terry's an intelligent child who did very well at his primary school, and yet at the moment he got into his secondary school, his grades started slipping. He found he could get up in the morning, he could walk to school at the right time, but the moment he stood in front of that gate, he said it was physically impossible for me to cross into the school.
Books stacked up facing this way, quietly, please, lads. Michael, books, please. Dave, pencils and rulers. Why not?
Greg Williams was one of Terry's teachers, one of the teachers that he got on best with. But because of classroom pressures, he was unable to help Terry.
He was always very nervous and very quiet when he started at Dainford, and maybe it was the very size of the place that, that was worrying. And certainly the individual attention he couldn't get. He's much more forthcoming now. When you meet him, he comes up and says hello, much more confident. This is all to do with the amount of time and attention that he could be given. See, we've tried, this business about coming into a big school from a junior school. We tried to make the first year have a course that was more like junior school teaching. But of course, the staffing problems that we've had have meant that this collapsed at the end of the second year when it was really hardly going.
Was these sixes, these ones?
Start at 10 and make them to 1. With Terry, we're quite lucky because one of our management committee is also an English teacher at the FE College. And she is, at the moment, starting pre-O-level work with 3 of our children, one of whom is Terry.
Do you want to take the exam?
Well, that's not...
No, that's not so bad, but look at that.
They're obviously intelligent children because within 4 or 5 weeks here, their work sort of changes out of all recognition.
At first, some of them said, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't write, and were very nervous even about actually putting pen to paper because they hadn't done it for a long while.
It's very obvious in their paintings. When we first gave them some paper and asked them to paint a picture, the drawings were all very small and they were very hunched up, and there was no actual attempt to make bold strokes and use lots and lots of colours. Now if you give them paint, you do get them making definite moves on it, very forcefully. And it sort of suddenly struck me that it must take a lot of confidence to actually paint. They're beginning to believe in themselves.
Yeah.
If I hadn't seen it before, I wouldn't think you'd done it, Terry. It's a smashing picture. Almost as good as Sandra there. No, it's really good.
didn't think I could draw like that.
Well, you don't take after me for drawing, because I was never any good at drawing at school. Smash your picture.
Too short though. It should be.
Well, it's not bad.
Longer.
We'll get 24 slices of
Spam.
spam. What else do we want?
Lettuce. A nice lettuce.
How many lettuces?
2. As many as last time.
2 lettuces. What sort of lettuces?
Long.
Long lettuces.
Cheese, cucumber, onions.
We felt it was important that the kids should go out and buy at least some of the stuff that we used every day, and that we felt it was very important that they should cook their own food. Partly because it involved them in a total process of taking responsibility for their day, for their eating, and making them understand that if you eat, then you have to wash up.
Golden delicious.
The two Terrys have got one thing in common, the fact that they haven't got a father, and I think they both feel a much greater sense of security here than they would have felt at their own school. Terry Cybush has found it necessary to actually start writing his life story.
When I was 4, I was walking on the way to a park with my friend. He ran across the road and said, "Come on." I ran and Minnie knocked me over. When I was in hospital, the police went for my mum and said, "Your son's in hospital." She said, "What's happening this time?" The policeman said, "He's had an accident." So she put on her coat and flew round the hospital. She asked the doctor, "Where's my son?" He said, "Was he small, with black hair?" "I've got bad news." "Sit down. He's dead." She started to cry. Then another doctor came and said, "Are you waiting to see your son?" My mum said, "Yes." Well, after he's come out of the operating theatre, he's having his leg off. She cried again. Then another doctor came and says, "Are you waiting to see your son? He's in Ward B." So she went, and I was lying in the bed unconscious. Then it became Christmas, and I went skidding on the ice. I got hit by a car on the leg, and I had to go to the hospital. I sprained it. 2 weeks after, I fell down the stairs and broke my arm. No, my dad didn't used to work. And one day my mum was having a baby, and Dad picked up a broom and smashed it across her belly. And so then that's why she left home. Every day nearly used to hit her.
Used to hit her?
Yeah.
Why?
He don't know himself.
Did you try to do anything about it?
Nothing I could do. All I'd done was dive down beneath the bed.
I left home in December and Terry ran away in March. He said that his father, well, Terry said that his father put him out and he didn't want to go back anymore. But he went walking about all night. He told me he'd been sleeping on stairs and backs of lorries. When he came, he went and found a friend of mine on a Saturday afternoon, and she lent him the fare money, and he came over to meet me at my mother's. And he told me that his father put him out and that he wouldn't go back there anymore. If I took him back, he'd run away again. Terry, what have you got there?
Right.
Where's that from?
Brand new dump.
What are you doing with it?
Taking the spindle away.
Terry, again like Terry Withers, was unable to make the change to secondary school. It's a very difficult position for a child that doesn't go to school. Unless he's got an incredibly close relationship with his parents, to actually go around and say, "Well, I'm not going," is very difficult. Unless you do it the first day, it gets progressively more difficult. You must have the sort of agonies of waiting to see if there are any letters from the school saying that you're not there. Plus, you've always got to be sort of prepared to make very plausible things up about why you're not going.
He said that he was coming home asking for money because they were going to the zoo and different visits. I was giving him money and I was waiting to hear about his uniform grant. And one day I was knocking the door into the door and it was a school board man, and I started tackling about Terry's uniform, and he said, "Well, when he gets to school he can have one."
And then what do you do? What do you do all day? There's nowhere to go, because if you're seen anywhere, people say, "Well, why aren't you at school?" You can't really stay at home all day. And so your days must be very long and very boring. And suddenly Terry comes here, and for some reason he likes it. And because he's settled now, his work is really sort of exploding with talent. Brendan's perhaps one of the best examples of why you can't have accurate truancy figures. He was one of those kids who used to go to school, get his mark, go out, come back for dinner, then get his mark in the afternoon and go out. He came to us largely as a result of Kevin Finnegan, who's a youth worker.
Get your mark and bunk off. Is that easy doing that?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of pressures on children in this area. You know, all children who truant and children who don't. Some of the children that I know that have been out of school for quite a long time, you know, often live in, you know, can live in circumstances that perhaps you and I would not appreciate ourselves. And for instance, Brendan lives in this building, in these buildings here, just on the right-hand side. And these are flats that are coming down, and the conditions deteriorate. He's a very happy kid. He's a very popular with his friends. He's a very good footballer. I think he will have the qualities to go through life with quite a bit of idea about where he's going to go. But as far as the economic conditions and the pressures that they put on him, they obviously are quite substantial.
3 years ago, my mum left. I was 10 and my sister was 7, and I was left with my dad. I knew she was going, but I did not realise. I did not take much notice at first. He was cross because she left him with us. My dad had to go to work. I had to look after my sister. I used to get up every morning at 7:30 to make my sister's breakfast and my own. My dad slipped his disc about 3 months ago and could not go to work.
Well, I've had a slipped disc for a start. Then I've been to court with Brenda. Then I got Jacqueline sick. I've had a miserable year.
Do you think this has made any difference to Brendan?
My wife and I separated, and I think it's emotionally upset him. And he's been to see a psychiatrist, from the school, and they said it was the reason as well. I will say one thing about him. When I was in hospital, he stayed here on his own. He wouldn't live with anybody. He did stay here on his own because he likes to keep the home together.
You mean with his sister?
No, on his own. His sister lived with somebody else.
He stayed here completely alone?
On his own, yeah.
For how long?
6 weeks, wasn't it, Brenda?
Yeah. Brendan, tell me, what did you do when you weren't going to school? What did you do all day?
I went at West End, play on the machine, going Cass and all that. Go over in Trafalgar Square, feed the birds.
Did you know what he was doing all those months he was out of school?
I didn't know he was out all those months. Because I knew he had time up. I didn't know he was out months. I knew he used to have time up. Yes.
Why? Didn't he tell you?
No, I didn't. He's not very honest.
He told you he was going to school,
He did, yeah. He used to swear. He used to tell the school board man he was going to school.
I think that truancy is one of the first things with children that can lead them into just being bored in the daytime, looking for something to do. And as soon as they do something, perhaps they're on private property, perhaps they're skylarking around, and the police, will pick these children up. The crime rates, for instance, during the school terms are very, very high, and during the holiday periods, Christmas, Easter, especially the summer, they're very low. They go right down. In the holiday times, a lot of holiday play projects, community projects are run in this area, where I think most of the kids are involved. And it's interesting that the crime rate, as soon as we go back in September and October, really, really shoots up, the delinquency figures. And the children that are not attending school during the daytime, these contribute. This is the major factor that is important. And it's these children who are not attending school.
10 a.m. in the morning on Thursday, about 3 weeks ago, I went to court. And I went with my dad. The man who took me to court said I missed 100 days out of 320 at school.
The courts that are in the area have been, I think, very, very hard. Perhaps, far too hard. And they've taken this factor of truancy as far too important, you know, in the way that they've dealt with these children. Often there are difficulties behind why a child doesn't attend school, very important difficulties.
One of the main difficulties that very few teachers understand is what it's like for a young child to be unable to read and write in a literate world, which is what most schools are.
So he comes out, no,
Donald, for example, is one of the very few children that we've met so far whose truancy started when he was in the infant school, and he became almost paranoid when he was asked to stand up and read in front of a group of children.
It's because I couldn't read and write properly in primary. I couldn't even read and write. And he told me to read in front of the class, and I couldn't. It made me feel a fool, so I ran out. And I kept running out. And every time I ran out, it made it worse for me because I was scared to go back.
It was a constant fight to get Donald to school. More so for my wife than me, because she had the job of getting him to school. And there were many occasions when she had to literally carry Donald to school. And to put him down was to risk having him make a sort of bid for freedom and dash over the nearest wall or scuttle down the nearest alleyway.
I'll stop going until I go to this school now. It's good.
What's it like, this school now?
Well, they ain't got rules like in secondary schools. Like, if you can pick your own lesson, that's what I like. Because I've been in a whole book in a year that I've done at Morpeth. I've done a couple of pages. In this book, I've literally filled it, and I've literally finished. And I've done that in a couple of weeks. That's a lot of difference, I think.
Why do you think you're doing so much better in this school, in the Crypt, than you did in your old school?
Because you can choose your own lessons and the rules. And there ain't no rules like that. You can't, if you want to get some sweets or anything, you can just run around the shop. You don't have to ask around. You have to ask, but you don't have to wait till break or something and then run around.
But surely in a school with hundreds of kids, you can't have anybody just running out to buy sweets whenever they want to, because the whole thing wouldn't work.
I know, but I'm just one of them kids. I couldn't go. So that's why I stopped going to school. I didn't go for a year and a half in primary.
What do you think's different? When you say I'm just one of those kids, what do you think is different about you from the other kids?
I just can't go to school. That's what's different, isn't it? I can't stand school.
What was your profession?
Safe blowing. Gelignite. Detonators. You could carry all you needed in a 2-ounce tin and travel anywhere you liked.
How long did you spend inside?
15 years. On and off.
I said, yeah, my dad's in the army. And they said, well, has he got a gun and all that in the army? I says, yeah. But I wasn't sure myself whether he was in army or prison.
They raided a place I had in Kent. And foolishly, again, they came in quite politely. And said, look, Barry, we've got to take you in. I said, well, fair enough, don't upset the little one. And I went into the living room and I said to Donald, well, I've got to go to London, Donald. He said, why? I said, well, I'm going with my friends, these two are my friends. He said, well, there's one outside at the window. I said, yeah, well, he's a friend of mine. He said, what's he doing in the garden? See, he was there to stop me going out the window. But I felt so wretched having to lie to Donald about these people. And they did it as politely and as calmly and as quietly as possible. And I left with them and left Donald in hysterics.
And I crashed the doors, the keys going as we walked in there to see him, and you heard lock, great big keys like that. So I thought, well, this ain't no army, it's a prison.
He did finally realise that I was in prison, and it was like a millstone being lifted off his back. His dad was a con, his dad was a thief, a bank robber and a rogue. You know, I wasn't a sex maniac. I wasn't in prison because of some terrible, horrible crime. I was a bank robber, something that Donald could identify with. He'd seen so much of it on the telly. And he now could look people in the eye.
Right, you want some money? Can I know? Give me, say what you, how much do you think you'll need?
£3.
Take 3.
And the change in him is wonderful. He's a much more contented, happier kid. And the 2 teachers there have obviously are just men who know how to deal with children in the best sense of the word, you know?
We've got a gear. Who's on?
Right, how much did you take?
I didn't take that much.
No, how much did you take with
£3.
you?
We took
£3.
£3, that's right.
45 and £1.70.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's right. They call them thieves. They say that most of the kids in this school are thieves. I think. I'm not quite sure, but you know, like at one stage or another they're thieved. But here you could leave anything around and they wouldn't steal it. And in your old school, you would get it nicked. You know, like your money in your blazer or something. If you left it, you'd come back and you'd have nothing there. But in this one, you'd leave anything around.
Do you think then that people outside have got the wrong idea about this school?
Oh yeah. Like they put it down on your mum and your dad. It just comes down to that, and I think that's wrong because it's up to the school to make you interested whether you come from a bad part of London or a good part. I come from an in-between part, you could put it, but it's up to the school to say what it really thinks. You know what I mean? The school's got to make you interested in it because I know some people come from the same building as me, some girls, and they go to the school and they're quite happy and they are, like good at it, good at work and everything. And this is because they can get into the environment, but some kids can't, and you have to help them, like me and like Carol.
You actually have to admit openly that you can't read, and your writing is awkward. Really sort of screws up a hell of a lot of kids. And Janice is a good example of this. Is this articulate child who, for some reason, the reason's really unimportant, can't read. And it's a crying shame that, in fact, there aren't really sufficient remedial teachers in a school to pick up children like Janice.
I just used to make myself sick. I thought, oh no, like get off of school today.
How did you make yourself sick?
Sticking me 2 fingers through my throat.
Did you?
Yeah.
You really hated it that much?
Oh yeah.
School that I used to go to, you was moving around, you had one teacher for one lesson, another teacher for another lesson. You can't get to know the teachers. But here you're with the teachers all day and you can get to know them.
The lessons were boring. Just give you a book and a pencil and do what you like while he sits there. While he reads, and we just do what we like, drawing. You're never learning now.
I couldn't get on there because there was sort of nothing around to sort of help you. All the kids were jumping over the desk and everything. But it's a different atmosphere and you can work in it.
Well, like you get used to one teacher and then suddenly she's not there no more and you have a different one and then, you have to get used to her. By the time you get used to her, then another one comes in and you just get all muddled up.
How often would that happen?
What do you mean?
The changeover of teachers?
Oh, nearly every day. Yeah, about every day.
There's a shortage of teachers in Tower Hamlets. Most of the secondary schools have been on part-time for virtually all this year. There's very little chance of this altering next year. In fact, it's probably going to get worse. The teachers they're getting tend to be straight from college. A lot of people want to come to teach in London. They arrive here and find the reality of living in London on a teacher's salary and say, well, I can stick this for a year or 2 years. But then what happens when they get married or decide they want somewhere better to live? They just can't afford to stay.
It's 2/8, sir.
This means that teachers, however dedicated they are working under such extreme pressures that 5 or 6 years is about the limit of even the most dedicated ones, which means that there is, in fact, very few teachers in the age band 28 to 38.
I've been here 5 years and I feel a bit of a veteran. Yeah. And it's ridiculous. But we talk about Greg's been here the same length of time. We talk about bygone teachers. And when we talk to Baz about it, these are people I've never heard of. And it's incredible. We are veterans. I'm a senior teacher because I've been here 5 years at the ripe old age of 27. And of course, this situation just breaks the whole system down.
You boys are on section B. Stay working at it, okay? So I just want to have a look at the section, the first.
Greg's headmaster has the problem of providing a balanced curriculum when there are in fact no teachers available to supply that curriculum.
You've got to have a staff structure, I feel, that lets teachers stay at a school for some time, and not a salary structure that more or less goads them to go from place to place every 2 or 3 years. Children can't make relationships in that way, and the more deprived the child, the greater the personal relationship for teaching to take place.
One boy who his first lesson in the day had been taken by a supply teacher because the present maths teacher was away on a course, and his second English lesson of the day, the teacher was absent, and his third science lesson of the day, the science teacher was taking away a school journey, and in the fourth lesson he truanted. And obviously you could completely understand a boy doing this.
Well, one of the reasons why truancy in our area, I think, has increased is because truancy has become part of the timetable. That a child may have academic studies for one day, and the following day has to be sent home because there is no teacher available there to teach him. And I think attendance of school is a routine, and non-attendance of school is as much a routine as attendance.
There's nothing wrong with these kids. I mean, the interesting thing is they come here, they come to all the truancy centres in London. 97% attendance at most. And these are kids that have been out of school for 2 years, some of them. Now, why is it that they'll come to places like this and not go back to school?
But don't you have a huge advantage with only 8 children? I mean, how can teachers with 30 children expect to hold their interest in the same way?
Ask a nursery teacher or an infant teacher how she manages to treat her children as individuals, often with a far bigger ability range than most of the teachers in secondary schools cope. Right, can I talk about going camping on Monday?
Yeah.
Do all your parents know about it?
No, and what we got to bring
I'll
them
tell
in.
my
Mum. She told me not to come back. My mum's got that for me.
Yes, Carol, tell us, how do we get there?
By train from Liverpool Street
Oh,
or Aldgate?
no. Or Aldgate to Baker Street. Get a train to Rickmansworth. It's only a little.
Request from over this end.
It's only a little way
Janice?
down the road.
What do you
I
want?
said, can't we go by van?
Does anybody know where Rickmansworth is?
I can only go into I'm going to jump over the top.
Come on, where are you at?
What are you doing there?
Here. Well, do we want to be fairly well separated from the...
We want to be miles
I nearly
away
said...
from it.
Miles away.
Terry Withers would have been dropped out during the second year and may well not have come back hardly at all. I don't know whether the officers would have taken him to court or what, but I mean, he can, he can avoid coming to school again at all.
Well, look, I'll do breakfast tomorrow morning.
All right, shall I do 3
I'll do it with you, Rich.
All right, Brendan and I'll do breakfast tomorrow.
Yeah.
Who's going to wash up? Brendan and I'll wash up as well.
No, we'll shut
Yeah, no, we can do that breakfast, Brendan. We won't have to do anything else the rest of the day.
Oh, brilliant.
So you might as well just do me and you for all Tuesday, and then the next 2 for all Wednesday, and next 2 for all.
Well, what did the others do?
But
They go and get the shopping, they go and get it. And they clean this up in here.
Brendan's already been to court himself, so he's already in a situation where if he hadn't attended school and he wasn't attending school, he would have been taken into care probably, and he would probably have been sent away, to a residential school out of the area, where he would have to have attended school. And I think for Brendan that probably wouldn't have been the best thing, and would have confirmed him into a life of crime where it really wouldn't be in his interests.
Come, James, bloke, come.
Now just have a little snake, right?
Hey, come in, we're going swimming. Go swimming! Come on. We'll go and get a sharks.
Is the water cold? It's freezing.
Let's go, River, I'm going for a swim. Is it cold? Is it? Well, I will a bit later on. I'm digging a place for the fire at the moment.
You're like the cat now.
You love it. I can't stay. No, no, come on, let me see if you like it. Yeah, you do.
Nah, I don't want to go back to another school. I like it here.
But you might have to take exams and everything.
I don't mind going back for exams, but not every day.
I don't want to go back. No, I don't want to go back now. But I suppose if I have to go back, I will. But I won't go back to my old school.
Mike, do you think the aim of the Crypt School should be to get the children back to a school such as yours, or do you think they'll stay there until they leave?
I can't see how they can stay there till they leave. You know, I mean, it's 5 years now in the secondary school education, and to have 8 kids with 2 teachers in one place for 5 years, I mean, what's going to happen to all the other kids that are tuned in? I think the object must be to get them in there, to try and make them more sympathetic to education, to try and make them realise the value of education, and then somehow, and I can't imagine how, work them back into the system, because I can't see it working any other way.
I don't think it's a real point, because we've only just started and we've got 8 kids at the moment. In a couple of weeks, a couple of months probably, we'll have up to 15. The eventual sort of total that we think we could actually deal with is 20. Also, we have absolutely no backup support here, so everybody here is involved in cleaning, cooking, caretaking, secretarial work. So we're not an expensive option, really. We are very, very, very cheap. And cheap enough to suggest that smaller units are financially viable. As to just keeping one static group of children throughout their school career, I don't think this is on, because we sincerely hope that the children will in fact return to school at quite regular intervals for specific subjects. They could then get used to the idea of going back to a school. And I see the whole process, if we eventually do get kids back, to last about a year. So the initial group will be quite a constant group for some time.
You want this guy?
Mr. Roy Morris.
Don't see why I can't go there.
Because you ain't done nothing.
Well,
so?
it ain't just, they ain't school for just, you ain't done nothing.
Of course it is.
It ain't, it shouldn't be for.
For kids who don't like school?
It shouldn't be for that though.
Yeah, why shouldn't it?
Because other kids might not like their school.
So they don't play truant now, do they?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. They might not like their school.
It shows you how long now the system's been going. My grandmother did it, my nan did it, my mum's done it, and so has my dad. The same system for nearly, for I think about 100 years. You know what I mean? It's been going, this system. It's time it got changed.
And you think that you've realised that it's wrong?
Oh, yeah. I think, if you sit and you think about it, you sit and you think, well, where has the system gone wrong? If some of the people, the head people in, you know, the school departments and things, just sat down and thought, well, where has it gone wrong? If they had the time to sit and think, then they'd find out where it's gone wrong and they could repair it.
Okay.
It seems to me that somebody's eventually going to start asking why children attend here every day and demand the school is open on Saturday and Sunday. They want it open in the evenings. They're going to start asking, well, why do they go to these places and not to the schools?
All right, could you tell somebody that we'll be round at 11 o'clock? This is Intermediate Education Centre.
As you want. Right. Can you squeeze, listen, can you squeeze something? Listen. Watch. Right.
Good, squeeze.
Yes, as he's cutting himself and the blood is pouring out.
Yeah. Just do that.
See the two MPs. Who are they?
Give us teachers of experience who've been in school some time, with whom the children can make the relationships. And then there'll be no need, I think, for a lot of these centres. And while we're going to use resources on this fringe type of education, then it worries me a little that we're not really being as keen as we should be to solve the problem where it exists in the school.
Instead of just pouring in capital expenditure, time after time after time, to try and improve a system which is not answering the needs of society, it would be far more beneficial to actually look at what education is, what it means. We must get away from the large school unit. We must, in fact, try and make things smaller. We must try and make them more personalised. We must try and make them more community-based. The success of this project is dependent on factors that schools never even tap. We have tremendously close links with the community. We're seen by a lot of the kids as part of their community. They come in, they're interested, they help, they want to come.